You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.
Hello, welcome to the Modern Mainframe. I'm Matt Dallaire. Today we'll be talking about the future of mainframe operations and the trends shaping it. Joining me to share what they're seeing in the industry are Intellyx partner and principal analyst Jason English, and from BMC, Director of Product Management Alan Warhurst, and Technology Solutions Director Jeremy Hamilton. Jason, Alan, Jeremy, thanks for being here.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
So, Jason, what are you seeing out there in mainframe DevOps? What are people asking you about?
Yeah, well, it seems like if you look at what experts are saying right now, they're actually overlooking the mainframe to a large extent, and that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that we could make. I really think that right now, enterprises that can control the operations of their own mainframe, they can really control their own destiny, and that those that don't won't. I mean, it's basically that simple. There's a big dichotomy coming if we do neglect this. So I think it's not just about saying, okay, we're going to move mainframe workloads and operations and data to the cloud or something like that. We're going to see actually a strong movement of and a repatriation of some workloads and data back to mainframes, in fact, and the best performing companies will really have this very balanced approach to understanding how their existing infrastructure can expand to meet their needs and serve certain functions very well. And then they'll really take control of what elements of mainframe operations need to be handled in a more agile way, right? So it's not just about where the compute and the data live. It's also about just our overall process for thinking about how mainframes fit into our DevOps lifecycle. So I think there's a lot of room for discussion here in that.
Jason, I'll go back to you. What is the changing nature of the work of mainframe operations in hybrid cloud environments?
Well, I think there's an assumption that we could just move mainframe operations into a hybrid cloud environment. But basically, what we're looking for is the advantages of each different type of cloud infrastructure for different types of workloads. So if we're talking about AI, you might be thinking of Google Cloud Services, or you might be wanting to lean more on the AWS version of, with basically supporting your training of ML there. Or you might be thinking more in terms of, like, how do I really have faster inference and build those kind of features into my application? So I might, have say a banking front end that operates as almost a cloud native service that's very lean, but it's still leaning very tightly with a back end on a mainframe that's doing, say, inference for fraud detection or other problems like that. So we see a lot of these hybrid workloads are really about just taking advantage of the compute power and where the data lives, and furthermore, just doing a better job of understanding how it fits into our overall development lifecycle.
Yeah, it's a really interesting shift, right? Like 5 years ago, everyone believed that the workloads would all shift over into the cloud. They'd be lifted, shifted, or migrated. But the reality is that hybrid activity is, bigger and better. And that conversation from getting completely off the mainframe and now it's more about right platforming or modernizing what you're doing on the mainframe. Some things run better on the mainframe, some things run better in the cloud, and the trick really is to understand why you're moving a workload off. Is it cost? Is it agility? There are a lot of ways to save money on the mainframe. There's a lot of ways to save money in the cloud, but it's really about what best suits the business.
Yeah, and I think you said it there, Jason. One of the things that I think a lot of people underestimated is like that data gravity thing. So that piece around, well, actually getting my data and moving all of it lock stock somewhere else means everything that accesses it has to kind of go. And so, building, data ops and data pipelines, which include the mainframe, is kind of key, but also this whole, well, actually, I want to come in and I just want to consume a part of the service which gives me access to a little bit of data and those kind of things. So this kind of interweaving, this mesh, this truly hybrid cloud thing is what I think I've seen more and more customers having a conversation about. And for us in ops, it's that thing about, okay, how do I do that now how do I enable all of the different stakeholders that care, the service owners, the SREs, the systems programmers, or the applications programmers, to really participate in that with a common language and deliver a joined up service, but but done in like you said, Jeremy, that exactly the right way, the right cost, the right performance, and kind of fit all those things together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we kind of address how hybrid cloud is going to make a big difference in terms of how we treat it. But I think a lot of people are also talking about in the same breath, like how is AI going to change operations in this hybrid cloud world? It just seems like that's where all the hype is right now. So I think we should probably address that fact. I mean, right now it seems like people are looking at something like Chat GPT and they think, oh, it's going to be applied to everything. It's going to be but really it's just a large language model in front of basically a customer service sort of bot, that you could use. But there's really a lot more to AI than that. I mean, I think a lot more is happening behind the scenes, especially when you think about things like AI ops or way more advanced algorithms that have nothing to do with basically a human conversation. So, what are your perspectives on how AI is going to change mainframe ops?
Yeah. Yeah, I think kind of the holy grail has always been to get to an environment that's self-monitoring and self-healing. What's the easy button? And there are a lot of solutions that are out there that help you to build that, but a lot of them, mean that you have to get your best systems programmer and set them down next to the data analytics guy or the machine learning guy and hope they come up with some value. And that has really always been kind of the crux, right? I mean, we have the technologies, the automation and the analytics pieces, but being able to prove something of value, something that actually gets you ahead of the game, predict out when problems are going to occur, building those models, that is really, where the secret sauce comes in and making, AI really hum within an operations environment.
Yeah, I think, and I think you mentioned it really well there, Jason. The Chat GPT thing, it it's a hugely powerful technology in very specific circumstances. So yeah, large language model in front of customer stuff. We're looking at we've put it into some of our solutions. We look at some of other solutions to help smooth the path. And I think for me, the one piece that whenever you get into a conversation with people and they kind of go, "Oh, what's AI going to do?" It's like, hang on a minute. We come back to the same business problems we've always had. We want to make sure it's always available. We want to make sure it actually, we know when it goes wrong and we can fix it ahead of time and those kind of things. And to your point, Jeremy, that whole, okay, I want this self-healing, self-managing system, this magic easy button, and only at the point where I really, really need someone to tell me, okay, you're going to push the button and restart it and it'll take you 10 minutes or something like that. Do you really want to make a decision? You just want it to fix itself. AI steps us down some of those paths, some of those things where, particularly when we've seen it in the mainframe space with people losing skill and losing experience, we definitely find it helps with some of those things where we can train systems and we can take some of the expertise and kind of bake it almost into the AI. So we kind of get this, not virtual systems programmer, but a little bit more expertise in the monitors and the tools to simplify the path. The other area where we've been really working on it, and I think makes a massive difference, is just the volume of data you can capture. And I think, when you look at all of the different ways that you can instrument a mainframe and say, okay, tell me that something's wrong. No human, even, a 40-year seasoned professional that's worked on it forever, can actually do all of that. They have ways, they have tools and techniques, and it's kind of, I mean, I think back to the days when I used to be a systems programmer. The way you did problem diagnosis was, well, show me what's changed. I want to look at what it is now and what it used to be, and back in the day, that was me flipping between two green screens on a particular piece. Actually, AI gives us the ability to do that really, really often, like every minute of every day, compare back over a built-in model and those kind of things, and really start to draw out to help with, those key things of, look, there might be something wrong here, go and spend some more time. And also, we're starting to see this go wrong now. Let's maybe fix it before we get there. Because I think, when we were talking about the hybrid cloud, the one the one thing that many people have kind of fed back to me is that uptime and availability is so much more important. I mean, the mainframes have always been measured in, 5 nines and all that kind of stuff, but now it's hooked into everything you deliver, everything that goes through to someone's mobile phone or whatever else. There isn't the concept of, well, there's no one going to be looking for their bank balance or buying something on shopping at 2 o'clock in the morning and all of that kind of stuff. It's always there, it's always on, and if it doesn't work, your customer goes somewhere else and you've lost that business. So that availability and uptime, along with all that extra complexity thing, just creates this kind of perfect storm. And I think for a lot of us that are looking at it, AI seems to be that, I won't call it a golden bullet, a silver bullet, whatever it is, but it will definitely help us to get customers to kind of those places.
What I've seen is that regardless of industry, when people talk about AI, they kind of say, oh, it's going to take my job. It's going to replace people. It's going to do this. But going back a little bit to what you said, Alan, it's not really going to replace systems programmers. It's not going to replace developers. It's really going to make their jobs easier and might even create more work for the existing professionals, right?
Yeah, I mean, we when we look at it, it's one of these things of, we talk to the systems programmers and stuff, and the question they always get asked is, how can I do more? How can I do more and more and more and more and more and more and more? AI helps them prioritize where that sits, where they need to spend their time, because actually the decisions that they need to make are being made quicker. It's not like maybe 40 years ago when you had, batch window overnight, you didn't worry about things and all that kind of stuff. Everything's always on. And so helping people really work through that today, particularly what we see is it's really helping people. And it takes away an amount of that toil to allow you to do all of the other pieces of work, the modernizations and all those kind of things that also needs to happen on the platform. Take away a load of this stress in kind of crisis situations to remove that crisis piece and then kind of deliver that. It is not certainly probably, within the next 5 or 10 years, going to truly just take out people. It's more about helping the people that are there and bringing them up.
Yeah. Yeah. I read an article just the other day that said, 60 to 70% of every workday for employees is spent on toil, things that probably should be automated, but they just aren't. And you have to get them done. So think of problem solving, the amount of people that have to get on a war room call just to determine whether the problem's on the mainframe side or on the distributed and cloud side. I mean, that's a lot of toil. That's a lot of hours out of a day just to figure out that simple equation. So if we can simplify that, to your point, Alan, bring all that data together. And the term I love is observability. Be able to see what's going on, what's the current state, and where is something broken. If nothing else, if it's on the mainframe side or cloud side, and narrow down that focus to let the people who don't need to worry about the problem continue on their way, but the people who do need to worry about the problem, give them actionable insights to go in and fix it.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be a replacement for people. In fact, the power to actually process so many data points at once is just not in our human comprehension. But if we have IT, if our IT ops are supported by AI ops, basically something can look ahead for us and give us like this predictive intelligence kind of at the point of decisions that need to be made. It's telling us how important they are, what are the probabilities of an incident happening, and then it can even do a lot of the work as far as routing the finished decisions to the right people, right? I mean, a lot of toil involves like bringing the right people together instead of having a call or a war room or another one of these break fix sessions. You could automate a lot of this through the channels of the existing business, and that's a big part of where AI ops is going to help as well, just on the internal services side of making us more efficient.
Oh, you brought up a very interesting point. One that I always try to highlight is, when something's broken and there's customers being affected, you're under the gun to fix it right now. And, we've all been there. Whenever we're rushed, we're hurried, we just take the quickest course of action to make it work. Now, if you had some additional time with predictability, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours before the problem starts affecting customers. Now you're able to fix it, get to the root problem, and fix it correctly or fix it more efficiently than if you're directly under the gun and have to fix it right now.
Yeah, I love this tie-in of AI to mainframe ops. And I think a next topic I'd really like to touch on is really thinking about the mainframe and the whole DevOps lifecycle. Since we're just past a decade in, maybe 12 years in since DevOps really started becoming a thing. And I always remember, like when that was first coming out, there was that Gary Groover book, "Leading the Transformation," which I thought it was very surprising that a book would be like about DevOps, but it'd be about DevOps on the mainframe. Like that's the first book I read on it. So it's an oldie but a goodie because it shows how an organization transforms itself, and it doesn't matter what the underlying technology is, or if the mainframe is the root that they're contributing to over and over again, that they are becoming more agile atop that platform. So it really breaks the mold of this idea that, oh yeah, to do agile DevOps, we need to be doing cloud microservices only, or something like that. When really it's not about being born in the cloud. It's really just about improving the overall organization's ability to deliver quickly. What are your thoughts on that side of things?
In BMC's mainframe survey, we've actually been tracking, the DevOps, the benefits people get out of DevOps, and those kind of things. I think the point where, so I'm an infrastructure guy, and if a developer tells me they want to update things really regularly, I tell them to go away because my system's nice and stable, and I just want to leave that alone. And that's kind of the way that I always grew up. Through conversations with customers, through talking through the survey and that kind of stuff, I think the two things that have really struck me is actually leaving things alone and just sitting in that silo is nothing about managing the risk. It's all about keeping a status quo, and actually you're introducing more risk because you're getting further behind. You're not flexing for your business and all those kind of things. So, and that's been probably the biggest thing that has not killed the mainframe, but has caused lag in mainframe organizations. So organizations we talk to, where their mainframe senior execs or whoever else come and go, yeah, we're thinking about getting off a mainframe. They'll talk about costs and stuff. You get down to it, it's all about process and approach. So it's all about, okay, I can do things more flexibly, and I'm not as close to my business, and it's all about the management of risk. The other thing I've seen as we've sort of talked to people who've implemented DevOps practices and started rolling out change more quickly and going through, agile transformations, is that the biggest benefits they get, aside from they're more flexible for their businesses, they're actually more secure, they're more stable, they are in a far better place. And in the event that they need to flex and change, that isn't an issue for them because they've learned how to manage change in a really effective way. That means that they can truly deliver that always on available service and getting hooked in. I think there are elements of technology challenge with it. So making sure that you can fit into a DevOps pipeline and those kind of pieces. But again, some of that's more about updating your tooling and updating your mindset, not about a real actual risk. And you end up in a place where you can do what you need to do to really service your business in the right way. It's fascinating to see people go through that journey and kind of come out the outside and go, the mainframe becomes that power of innovation, and then they can truly choose, like we talked before, and you guys talked about, well, okay, let's put an application in the right place. Let's not worry about, well, I can't do that on my mainframe, or I can't do that over here because I haven't got this but set of tool, or I can't fit in, or I can't do change fast enough. You're choosing it based on where does it run best, where's my cost best, where's my security and availability best, and it becomes that truly hybrid cloud rather than picking just on, but those guys take too long to do it, and I have to fill in a chitty that takes ages.
Yeah, I was sitting with a customer just about a month ago, and we were talking about DevOps on the mainframe, and he was used to more of 5 or 6 releases per year, and we were talking 20 or 30 releases, and he physically cringed. Like I saw him tense up, but to your point, Alan, I mean, there's so many benefits that come to becoming more agile on the mainframe, becoming, having more releases and being able to correct, course correct as you're going through. And the thing that I tried to stress to him was, if you're static, if you're the mainframe and everybody around you is running at 100 miles per hour, you're never going to be able to catch up and be in the game, and you're always going to be the laggard. But if you're able to move into a DevOps mindset as well and catch up into that flow, now the entire system can flow better and reap the benefits of what DevOps is all about.
Yeah, if you don't have that mindset, I mean, basically you're building up technical debt anyway. And if your systems can't bend, if they can't become more resilient, then they're going to break eventually. So the mindset of change is actually ensuring better operational performance in the end. I mean, it still has a huge impact. It's not just about being faster. It's great to see that companies are leading that charge.
Right.
Yeah, very interested in what you mentioned, Jeremy, something about observability too, and I'm just kind of wondering how do we change our mindset to where we're kind of shifting left our idea of testing, shifting left observability, so it's built into the workloads and into our mainframe operations processes, and how has that sort of side of the equation changed for you out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've seen the most of is think about what observability is all about, right? It's being able to see across what's going on in your environment, your current state, historical, understanding what normal is. Is it normal? Is it out of whack? And then even get to a predictability type state. But what I've seen is to take a look at it from a business service perspective is really started, opening people's eyes. So what I mean by that is you go from the mobile, your mobile phone through the cloud, through middleware, through your infrastructure down into the mainframe. What are all those pieces and how do they all connect together? What are the dependencies? How can I look at this business service as a complete entity and versus a platform here, a platform there, and a platform there? Okay, that's the first step to me. Then it's about getting the data in and correlating that data into the individual pieces and understand how it fits together. So the mind shift that I've seen is now, as Alan mentioned a little bit earlier, SRE organizations are saying, hey, we've done great in the cloud. We've brought the distributed side of the house in, but our most mission critical applications are still back-ended by the mainframe, and we need to include that as well in order to get to the state of observability that we're after.
Yeah, and I think this is the area that kind of interests me the most, because I think it's the one where immature is probably not the right phrase, but it's the one where you kind of see so many different approaches across the marketplace. So you see some organizations somebody somewhere's read the term SRE and they've kind of gone along and they've gone, right, my systems program is now an SRE and this guy over here is an SRE. And then some who've truly embraced that and are driving it through. And I think there's areas where you can see, so things like open telemetry and instrumenting applications to improve that observability piece are still not a thing that, if we talk to mainframe organizations about that, we're talking to, some of the guys who are working with us on DevOps, and we've been talking to them about, okay, let's get true application end-to-end observability through. And they themselves are still trying to work out some of these both organizational structures and then this piece of putting it together. So when I look at the technology, I think all of the technology parts are kind of there or thereabouts, but there needs to be tweaks and changes in it. And I think what I'm truly expecting to see probably over the next, 3-5 years, maybe shorter because of the speed that the market's moving, is how all of those pieces come together. I think we'll start to see a change in how the data comes together. So, to Jeremy's point, this is all about a business service and delivering a business service and flexing it for the business, and how you pull all of those pieces together. Today, we still end up in this bit of a mush match between some things are almost infrastructural focused, and we show you all the elements of that, and some of them are application focused. And how do we start to bring all of those pieces together in a single world that really makes sense to, almost like let's get the 3 different roles that are associated with it, a developer, an SRE, and those kind of things, and take the same piece and almost just flip the view sideways and upside down and a little bit left and those kind of things. today, that's what we're seeing I'm seeing kind of evolve out of the market. I think it's going to be hugely interesting as we go through the next couple of years. We've got to the point where all the data can be in one place, but quite what people want to do with it and how they should do things with it and those kind of things is where they're sensing out, and we're trying to work with them to understand.
Yeah, man. It's not all about the endpoints. It's also the workload, and I always like to picture it in my head like think of an individual transaction running through the system. It's got to go through different processes to get there. The end user really doesn't care what those processes are, just that it gets done. And so, can you see into your system and understand how that work is flowing, understand where the bottlenecks are, and then, to our point earlier, when it breaks, where to fix it.
Yeah, that's fascinating side of things. Another thing especially in the companies that I cover, I see them getting a lot of pressure on the back end through these new initiatives like FinOps, for instance, right? Like saying, like, what are we actually getting for our investment? Because almost every company has the same challenge. Like the budgets don't increase. IT budget never increases at the rate of demand, right? Like we expect to double our capacity to handle things, but we expect it should increase it by maybe 3%, if at all, right? So there's a lot of this kind of activity going on of companies trying to cost justify their presence, and up to date, a lot of the idea of justifying the presence of the Mainframe group is, what's the risk without us, right? I mean, and so we need to kind of turn this cost equation on its head to understand, like, hey, I'm making investments so that this is resilient into the future. And what does that actually mean to the person who's trying to manage operations, but also justify their existence in the budget?
Yeah, and that's kind of a fascinating sort of thought process about the conversation between cost and the conversation between value. And it's kind of interesting there, Jason, you used the term about, okay, but this is how much the mainframe costs me. And I think one of the things that the Mainframe team has been really bad at over many years is talking more about, well, what's the value that we deliver for that? What are we doing? How do we contribute? How are we helping you do that? What we've definitely seen is some of the most forward-thinking organisations, and one of the financial institutions in down Australia. We were talking with one of their heads at Mainframe, and he was saying that they've been using their mainframe to generate various web services, so authentication web services and all kinds of things, which they can do really quickly, really simply, really easily. That is helping their organization really innovate and drive forward with things. So he's got his team positioned in a way that the mainframe is being used for competitive advantage. It's not just, that classic response of, but if you don't run a mainframe, what you're going to do, I've taken away all of your risk. And actually that mindset of, but it's on a mainframe, so it's okay. What we've seen with a lot of customers is they've started to come round to the fact that just because it's on a mainframe doesn't mean it's secure, doesn't mean it's available, doesn't mean it's most cost effective. It can be, but unless you really take an active approach to managing your operations and your cost management and ensuring you're running the right software mixes and those kind of things, if you're taking the right attitude to how you manage security on the platform, whether you're doing pen testing and those kind of things on it, whether you're making sure you're using the latest backup and recovery tools and techniques and hooking into your cloud or whatever those things are to do that and really, optimize and drive that, you're always going to be leaving things on the table. So what we've seen is people taking that mainframe change and really turning it to their advantage. And then what they then find is they get into those bigger architectural discussions and they become that platform of choice, not just my mainframe sat there and it just does what it does. And your option is you keep your budget flat and the capacity may double, but you just need to work it out, guys. It's about changing that conversation that we've seen the most successful organizations go for.
Yeah. It's funny that resiliency, no longer just means redundancy. That's another change in mindset that I've seen. Where you have just a secondary backup, then that's good enough. the next level of resiliency really requires flexibility in the infrastructure, being able to scale up and scale down, which the mainframe does exceptionally well. And then you establish that proactive stance, and instead of just being responsive to whatever comes your way, and that's really what I think the mainframe strong points are. But to tag on to what Alan was talking about, it's funny. I would say 3 to 4 years ago, there was a switch, and everybody was all about availability and agility. And then here lately, more conversations have been availability, agility, and cost. Can you give me all this function, but also help me to right size my platform, to lower our overhead in different ways without sacrificing what we're doing from an availability perspective.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies thought, oh, we could just basically just lean everything we'll just start dumping things into cloud data warehouses, figure it out later, right? Let's dump all our security information into a platform, and then we'll figure it out later, because it's infinitely scalable, right? But the costs are also exponentially increasing, and it makes you really want to think about, like, how do I do this without maybe dumping everything that I was moving now? So people are making new trade-offs where they are thinking about, like, what kind of data do I want to keep on the mainframe? What workloads do I repatriate to mainframe where I can actually get huge cost advantages and also performance advantage by having the workload closer to where the customers are, if they're in that region, or if it's closer to the data. It can make huge differences in this cost versus value equation. And even just little things like, oh, we can run zips instead of MIPS, or we could do like other optimizations on the mainframe that make a big difference in impact and cost.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm very also interested in, I think a big part of what we wanted to talk about today was really the future of mainframe operations. And a big part of that, I think, is really the talent crunch. Right now, we're seeing probably a severe shortage of people entering the market for this as a job skill, but there's also been a lot of efforts from the community at large to do something about it as well, as far as education and also an open source community that's trying to support tooling to help companies get a handle on this without some of the difficulties, and just to change people's minds about how it's going to work in the future. I think it's really probably one of the most essential job skills that we have in our IT market right now. So what are your perspectives on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure Alan can agree with me here. Is I remember being the young guy in the room, from a mainframe perspective. I remember, being the new guy, and everybody else was, 10, 15 years, senior. And then now I'm the older guy. I'm the seasoned one, I guess. But it's interesting. I see more and more people, more and more younger people looking at the platform, looking into, hey, it may not have all the bells and whistles as you would see on the front end from a cloud perspective, but this is really interesting technology. And, I've seen more companies take a focus on, hey, if we don't do something soon, we're going to age out our workforce. I remember when I started on the mainframe, everyone said, well, it's going to be about 5 years. You're going to be seeing a pretty big shift. And that was 15 years ago. But I honestly believe we're at that point now where I am seeing that shift. But I do also think that there is a new generation coming in. We are also creating better GUIs, and more intuitive interfaces. Yeah, I logged onto the green screen my first time, and first thing I did was lock it up. And I thought I brought the mainframe down. And now obviously the people don't have to go through that.
Yeah, no, I think, and it's kind of interesting to see the different geographical splits. So, some of the guys in Europe particularly have really, really focused on, apprentice programs and bringing new people through and all that kind of stuff. I think like Jeremy said, the key for us when we look at it as a vendor is, okay, how do we make these modern experiences work? And then also, how do we take, when going back to the AI discussion, actually the AI piece helps some of those youngsters, those new in career people really kind of superpower their skills early, because it just helps them to work out where on earth to look, to actually do that. I mean, it is funny. Jeremy says that about, being the young guy in the room. And it's one of those ones where, yeah, probably for about 10 or 15 years, it just wasn't a problem. Everyone was kind of old enough to be my dad or my grandfather or goodness knows what from there. And kind of, last time I went to one of the conferences, it was kind of like, yeah, there was like whole cohorts of people that are barely older than my kids. And I'm not really old. So I was just a bit like, oh my God, sort of in the bar at night, I'm sat talking to a 22-year-old about details of mainframe stuff till 2 o'clock in the morning kind of thing. And it's just like, this sort of thing never happened when I was there. There's big groups of them coming through. And it's kind of interesting to talk through with that next generation about where they see and what they see and why they've been attracted to work on the mainframe. And I think, like you said, Jason, it's an area where there's a good demand for skills. Most organizations now seem to have kind of worked out anybody who was kind of getting off has kind of gone. Everybody else is looking at either right sizing, so mixing in with that hybrid thing, or continuing to invest or do whatever. So there's a continual demand to do it. And then I think the other thing, the feedback I've had from some of the guys is, look, if I can work on the platform that supports the entire financial industry, that supports the entire airline industry, that supports all of the hospitality industry, the most important systems and all of that kind of stuff on it, and I can go and I can play with it, and the stuff I do makes massive difference to this, and everybody cares, why wouldn't I? It was kind of one of those conversations we were having. I think it was one of the UK based guys from one of the banks, and that was kind of their feedback. And I've never really thought of it like that, but it is that thing about, it's definitely an interesting and attractive piece to go. And I think you're kind of getting that upswell of stuff. The big question, the big challenge is there going to be enough of those people coming through before the guys who are, at, or in many cases past retirement age, leave the platform, and how does that go? And I think that still keeps a lot of executives up at night for sure, and there's a lot of geographical variance. So where you've got a locality that's got a lot of mainframe shops, tend to find you get a lot more skills. If there aren't as many in your area, then there's more of a worry because you maybe don't have people locally that you can recruit and those kind of things. So it's certainly an area of interest. It comes up again. I reference our survey, but it's kind of in that top 3-4 for most people that are thinking about the platform of, who's going to run my mainframe for me and how do I do it? But they seem to be rising to the challenge of bringing on people, training people, doing all those kind of things.
And it kind of go hand in hand with some of our previous topics like DevOps. I heard one customer I was working with who said that if you do something different for the mainframe than you do on the other platforms, that's kind of a death sentence. You really want to have the universal across the board, and getting those modern interfaces, getting the interfaces in the people's hands that they can actually work with and be productive with is a huge part and a strategic step that I've seen a lot of customers take. Is that, hey, we're looking for these nice interfaces that will be very similar to what they're working with, or the same what they're working with in other platforms, and integrate together. And I think that's a really, really crucial step for companies.
We're getting a little low on time, but I do want to ask, Alan, you mentioned apprenticeship programs and other type programs in Europe. Jeremy and Jason, have you seen any increase in that kind of approach in the United States? I've talked with some professors in the past who were trying to promote the mainframe with their students and trying to get companies to invest more, and not even necessarily monetarily, but just invest more effort into getting people into apprenticeship programs and getting them recruited earlier. So have you seen any kind of increase in that in recent years?
There are definitely programs coming onto the market now. I mean, I think we're seeing a few more conferences. I know obviously BMC's been a leader in providing some of this type of mentorship as well. But overall, I don't think we have as much of a disciplined approach in the US as they probably do in Europe as far as this kind of apprenticeship idea, right? I think there's a lot of effort going on right now on the tools side to make the tools as easy to use as you would have for the rest of the technology, so that really mainframe can be a first-class DevOps citizen, right? And we can manage it the same way we do other systems. That we have development languages and open source entry points to this community too. That's really going to get people involved. But yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely an area where it varies by region, and we could do a lot more to catch up here in North America.
Yeah, I would say, 50 to 60% of the customers I've worked with that I've actually talked to around this topic have some sort of apprenticeship program going, 5, 6, 10, 20 different people that they've brought in to shadow, learn, take baby steps into the platform. I remember when I started, it took me about 2 years before I could really hum, in my job from a mainframe perspective. And, I see companies incrementally bringing folks on and helping to learn DB2 and CICS and MQ and, all the different subsystems in the platform itself.
Great. I thought it was pretty cool how Alan was mentioning the AI too, because that is a great application for AI. AI is maybe it makes up stuff in a customer sense, but it's actually pretty good at documenting things, right? It's pretty good at documenting what happened in a release process and in a testing workflow, and it's a pretty patient teacher as well. It doesn't mind if you ask it a lot of redundant questions. So there's going to be some pretty cool applications for that to help ease that training process as well.
So even around the thought process, recording what that flow is to look like to diagnose a problem, and
right.
Yeah, that's huge.
Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. I'm sure you could go on longer. I wish we could. But Jason, Jeremy, Alan, thank you for joining us. Thanks for having this great discussion on this topic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll include some links in the show notes where you can find more information on some of the topics covered here today, like SRE and AI. Thank you for listening to The Modern Mainframe, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
You're listening to The Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.